Okay, Tammy, we can go ahead and start.
Hi, thanks, Chris. Good afternoon, community. My name is Tammy Rowe Davis, and I'm president of the New York, New Jersey Regional User Group. I'm so glad you can join today. So today's topic is Unified Intake Process, PPM Ideas at Spectrum, and this is going to be presented by Michael with Spectrum. So I'm going to give you a little bit of bio on him, but before we do that, as we're going through the presentation, Michael is going to stop and ask for questions, but you can also use the Q&A chat and post your questions there, and I'll let him know, and we'll just take it from there. So just to give you a little background on Michael, he's Director of Tools and Processes, 20-plus years experience managing PPM tool sets. He has 10 years specific to PPM, 10 years experience as project and program manager, and 10 years experience as a director level managing 37 government data centers. That's a lot. So I'm so glad, Mike, that you've taken time out of your day to present for us. We truly appreciate it. And with that being said, Michael?
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Hello, my name is Mike Stevich. So what we're going to talk about today is our unified intake idea process that we've developed in PPM. Here at Charter, we really try to utilize, to give you a little background, we really try to utilize the tool to the maximum capabilities, so much, so to speak, so much get the best bang for the buck, so to speak. So we've done a lot of process work in PPM. We're very heavy into reports, report development, dashboarding. I have 12 people reporting to me right now, some of which are support. I got a senior manager and a manager that reports to me. The manager is over our support team. She's got about 5 resources. And then I've got the senior manager over my development side. She's got 6, and we're looking for another report developer. Because we had one lady that decided to become a stay-at-home mom, which is good for her. So we're actually actively looking for a SQL Jaspersoft type report developer. We've done a lot of neat things with the PPM. We had a customer in Denver approach us about 6 months ago, maybe 9 months ago, and they, as many of you probably have experienced, were struggling with how they do their unified intake process. What we call unified intake is basically the project charter or the statement of work to produce the project work. That is a very, very involved process, which involves many, many sign-offs, approval signatures, all the way up to sometimes the CFO for the money. Getting business planning involved with charge codes, getting high-level business requirements together, project statements of work, all kinds of stuff goes into that. And they were utilizing an application called Jira, which I'm sure many of you are very familiar with, to perform this work for them. They started using Jira probably 4 years ago, when the company was much, much smaller than we are now. And what has basically happened, Jira outgrew itself. It's just Jira is not capable of handling the amount of work that they've got going through unified intake right now with all the processes that are tied to make this happen. So probably about June, July, August time frame, I started having very, very high-level meetings with the Denver teams to discuss what they were thinking about doing and wanting to do, and I had to see if that was possible in PPM at all. So I spent about 2 months working with CA. I worked with our third-party vendor that we deal with a lot, which is called Rego Consulting. I talked to them, and it took us a couple months to get that together. Then we worked with Denver on getting their true business requirements set up. And then we released probably the first week of March in production. So we've got a full, speaking of that, we've got a full development user test environment as well as production environment. It's a very robust system. We've probably got 4 Jaspersoft servers, 6 application servers in prod alone, and then UAT and dev kind of trickle down from that. And we're right in the middle of a 15.4 upgrade. We actually got our dev deployed this week, so we're rolling in that as well. So we're really excited about that. So does anybody have any questions for me before I get started? And by all means, jump in. Go ahead.
Nothing in the Q&A.
Okay. Okay. So when I've given a lot of presentations, so what usually happens, I pretty much get into the presentation, so get kind of focused on that. So by all means, interrupt me if you have any questions, and I'll probably stop every 1 or 2 slides to ask for questions if there are any. So like I said, they've been using Jira for their process previously. I don't know if you're aware or not, but Charter Communications purchased Time Warner and Bright House Network, which caused really an explosion in the adoption and the demand for projects. Our project work probably quadrupled in the last 3 years. So it basically caused the processes in Jira and Chalk to become more complex to support. So they were looking for a easier solution. And Jira really, if you know anything about Jira, Jira really isn't a project and portfolio tracking application. It's just not designed to do that, even though it's open source and you can make it do that. It's just functionally not really capable. So they started running into issues with their executive leadership. They had multiple add-ons put on by various people, which kind of made the system a little more complex than it needed to be, with all the custom integrations they did for their project work. So like I say, the Unified Intake team, they began using PPM for their new ideas and submissions to manage their existing ideas. What we've done with the PPM tool is to allow end-to-end management of multiple projects and portfolios basically out of the box with some modifications that you'll see here in a few minutes. We also put in there a way for them to update status, because that's pretty important for all levels of management, so they know exactly where the charter is at any given point in the process. We also send out, we develop processes to send out notification emails from PPM based on the various milestones that happen to a project charter as it goes through its full release process. We also address security and permission issues. We developed 2 options to actually submit ideas to Unified Intake. We'll show you those 2 ideas that we've developed. I'm going to show you some screens on how we edit an existing idea, and then the actual intake request status dashboard. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. So security and permissions. This was something that we had to take a real close look at because of the various permission groups that we have. We have a lot in PPM. I believe it's, I'm going to take a quick look here. I believe we have over 100 groups for different permissions across PPM. So we had to really take a hard look to make sure, and this was an executive decision from Denver's management team on who could see which screens going through this whole ideas process, because they didn't want the users to be able to see the back end. So once a user submitted an idea, that's all they wanted them to see. They didn't want to see anything in the background on what it took to actually develop the charter, basically status. Status was done via reports, and so on. So we had to come up with the ability to view and edit pages and portlets, so which we finally determined by user role and permissions of these roles. So we control all the roles and permissions. My team, just so you know, nobody outside my team has admin access to the tool for obvious reasons. We decided to set the permissions at the page level and not the field level because of just how complex these pages are that we had to develop. So you can see down at the bottom there, I don't know if you can see that on the screen, but we have 4 permissions. I can barely read. It looks like we have Denver Intake Admin, we have Denver Intake Ideas, Intake Lead, Denver Intake Idea View Only, and Denver Intake Partition Access. So those were the 4 rules, the 4 permission classes that we determined that we needed to utilize. So we developed 2 ways to submit ideas. The first one, which everybody should know about, is basically using a ZOG process. We've come up with a web farm where we actually ZOG in the data, which is number 1 there. And then we also use, obviously, the ideas within PPM to generate that idea. And my team, number 1, my team developed, I got a full-scale development team, so we developed that entire web farm page. And we utilized that before with some older technology that we utilized in 2013 for our BI team. They utilized that as well. And if they didn't use it under ideas, they used it under the project creation side. So using the web farm, this is a screenshot of our web farm. It's basically some drop downs, fill in the blanks kind of thing. It's pretty simple. The good thing about this is we really studied the Jira side of their process, and it was determined by polling their users that it was very convoluted and very complex, and it just took too long. It was just too much considering the amount of work they had to do. They found themselves being in Jira 2 to 3 hours a day, which was probably about 2.5 hours too much for one day. So part of my team's goal was to be able to streamline the process as much as possible for the user experience. But then with that said, on the flip side of that coin, we then had to do a lot more background work, which the person creating the idea would not see. So it was a double-edged sword. But at the end of the day, my goal is to make sure the customer's happy and we're giving them a good product to utilize, and we were very successful at doing that. So to save time, I'm not going to read all these. You can see it, basically the idea name, your requester. You got a drop down for your organization, which is basically the OBS structure. You've got the intake presenter, and you got the program name if that's applicable. Are there any questions?
No questions in the Q&A, but for myself, a comment is this is good because there's a lot of times, like we have our project initiation forms and things like that, and that's something that we could leverage, you know, based on what you're displaying today. Yeah. We can leverage that without them having to log in. That's pretty amazing. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, and we just use the ZOG process. I mean, that's what it is. And, you know, a lot of our users, you know, charters, we're very busy here. So, you know, you work an 8-9 hour day, you go home, and you're still putting in 2 or 3 hours. So the VPN connection, which I'm sure many of you experienced, when our users are working on VPN into PPM, sometimes that connection just isn't 100% solid. And if you drop a packet or a partial packet's dropped, you lose a millisecond of connection. Whatever you're sending to PPM, PPM is very bad about this, and nothing against PPM, Chris, but we all know this. If a packet is just slightly mistransmitted, Clarity won't take it. It's just that simple, and we get garbage in. So we've done this ZOG process for our users for basically the VPN because it works very well. We found that out with BI in 2013 because that's when we found out working on PPM using the charter VPN system at the time just wasn't really stable. And I don't think it's PPM. I just think it's the, well, in a way, it's good that PPM would bring in the garbage. That way we'd know we'd have bad data, we could get rid of it. But the VPN is just, at that point, just wasn't robust enough to handle the connection to be up. And that's going through the person's probably Wi-Fi at home. That brings in another hop there, so you've probably got issues there. So this turned out really well. here. Okay. So, accessing the idea via the PPM, it's pretty straightforward. Everybody that's worked in ideas knows how ideas works. We didn't do much to this, but what we did do, we have multiple customers using ideas. So part of my role, besides being director, I'm kind of the architect. I'm the one that presents the idea, the vision. I've got a roadmap out to almost 2020 on what we're going to do with PPM. People think that's kind of ridiculous, but considering how powerful PPM is, and I've got over 24 internal customers that use the tool doing various parts, using various parts of the application, I have to have a roadmap out there or I just won't survive. So one of the big things we had to really look at was unified intake is done by almost all of our customers. However, the problem with unified intake is very simply none of them follow the same process, which is fine. You know, I have 24 business units, and out of those all those 24 business units, we're up to about 10 different customers within Charter. So we have IT, we have marketing, we have Spectrum Business, which I'm sure you saw the commercials with the mummies and whatnot. That's who we have as a customer. They're a big one. We got product, we've got G&A, we got care, we got network ops, field ops. We even have HR, believe it or not. So each one of these customers wanted to utilize unified intake at various stages. So what I decided to do was to put it in a partition. That was the best solution to do. So what we have is we've got we have a parent partition and we've got child partitions off those parents. So we tried very hard, and I'm sure you can all relate to this, we tried very hard to get everybody on the same page to use one unified intake process. Obviously, 5 to 10 minutes into that meeting, we found out that that was going to be impossible. And that was basically due to people are pretty much firmed on their process and they're unwilling to make change, the impact to their teams and whatnot. So I took that as like, okay, this is a positive. So I made PPM flexible enough to accommodate these various customers. So we have partitions for each of the various unified intake teams that use this system. So basically, you know, ideas, you can click on new. We all know how that works. And here's where you come into the partition. Here's your drop down. We have a drop down. You can drop down to the various partitions, and then you come in, you hit create new idea, and then you see with the screenshot below. Next comes this page that we developed, and this was based on our customer need. I know you probably can't read it, but if you get the deck, you can see it. We've got multiple drop-downs, pick boxes, freeform text, and this is all surrounding what our customer needed to have for, and I believe this is our Denver partition. So you can see we got multiple fields, the drop-downs, and then we also have view-only access, which is really for our executives. I'm sure the executives in your company, the VPs, GVPs, EVPs, they don't want to be able to have edit rights. There's no point. So we basically gave them view-only access so they can at least, if there's a question that comes up, without bothering the unified intake team, they can just go and see it themselves, or they can call the unified intake team. Are there any questions?
No, nothing so far.
Okay. So next we get into the dashboards. This is really cool. This is where I'm really impressed with 15.4 because we're really going to, a lot of our executives are getting away from laptops. They're getting basically, I guess they're iPads and whatnot. So, you know, having the mouse and all that kind of stuff, that's kind of going away. So they got the little, you know, they're using their fingers to scroll and whatnot. So we're really starting to be sensitive to that our executives are really getting away from the traditional laptop with or the computer with the keyboard and the mouse. So we've become a little sensitive to that. So we're starting to bring up this dashboard report. And We're a little immature in dashboards, to be perfectly honest, even though I got a team of 12 to 13, sometimes 14. We've got so much work to do. We only got so much time in the day, and dashboards just always seems to fall by the wayside, unfortunately. But we are trying to get back into it, and this is just a sample of the dashboard based on the, looks like here we've got a request status dashboard at the various stages of the dashboard.
So, Mike, I have a question. So we talk a little bit about 15.4, and, you know, we know roadmap is coming and stuff like that. So how would you incorporate this with your roadmap? Because you want to see these ideas on your roadmap, right? Or
yes.
not?
To be honest, I have done some extreme work with, I've done a lot of work with 15.4. We've had a sandbox. CA was very gracious enough to give us a sandbox for 15.4 for a while. We played around with it. We played around with it for about 90 days. So I kind of, and we've had probably, my God, 10 demos for 15.4 for various customers within Charter. So I kind of already know what's coming in 15.4. We're rolling it out right now. So I've kind of already got that built into my roadmap. But unfortunately, with my various customers, their demands and their wants and needs change frequently. So I have to go back and constantly be revising my roadmap at a very detailed level. At a very high level, we're going to implement like the roadmap. You know, that's going to be big. We're also going to be implementing the what-if analysis. My customers are really turned on about that. So there's a lot of things that are on my roadmap that we're going to launch regardless of the minute details of what my customers do or do not want. So it's a gamble, but I think I got a pretty good handle on it. Mm-hmm. I will say one thing, that when we launched Unified Intake, we got a lot of resistance from a lot of diehard Jira Unified Intake customers. A lot of resistance. And I appreciate and respect that. I mean, that's perfectly fine. They've been using Jira for 3 to 4 years. Their user base is comfortable. They feel good about it. They feel confident in using it. They get their work done. But I will have to admit, when we released the Unified Intake and PPM, I got about 15 emails saying, I need a demo of this. I need a demo of this. So congrats to my team as well as CA for producing a great product that really sold itself. So when they saw the Unified Intake and what we did, how much we simplified it for them, we've probably got 5 or 6 more customers that are interested in getting out of the Jira model and using the Unified Intake process, with some changes, of course. But that's the whole purpose of the partitions. So we can just copy over a partition, make some changes, and they're good to go. So it's really been a very wonderful experience for my team in Charter to see how much attention the Unified Intake has received, plus the ROI for my Denver customer. They've been using this for just about 3 or 4 weeks, and they're already seeing a return on their investment on the amount of processes that have been cut down, plus the reliability of PPM. When they were using Jira, they were seeing some issues with the data coming across into Jira, coming into their reports. Now, I don't know if that was a reporting development issue or if that was the Jira database. I have no idea. I really didn't get into that. But they were seeing some inconsistencies between what they were entering into the Jira portlet and what the output was in their reports that came out of Jira. So this has been very, very well received, needless to say. So this is another shot of the dashboard. The intake request status dashboard. You can see there's a few ideas listed there. You can select and see what the different status is. You can configure that window just like any other PPM window and see what's on hold or what the status is at a very quick level. And we've also got some reports out there. We've got about 3 or 4 that are they're released, but I really didn't want to show them in this demonstration because they're really not 100%. They're still little, they still need to be tweaked. Our customers are still reviewing them, making changes. So they're really not, they're in prod, but they're really not ready for prime time. So, and I think that is, Go ahead.
Sorry, I have one more question. Can you go back
Sure.
to your, so when someone is submitting their idea, right? So someone, it has to go through some sort of approval process, correct? Once it's submitted based on the form.
Yes. So all ideas, all an idea is an ask. It's a customer saying, hey, I want to make an apple and I got $200,000. Well, then they submit that idea and it goes through the various approval levels, and once it hits an executive level at a VP, GVP, a group VP, or an executive VP, they may say, no, we're not going to do this project now. We're going to reappropriate those funds to this other project. So just because they submit an idea does not mean it's going to become a project.
And do they get some sort of notification that's probably behind the scenes with the process that you built to say, you know, this is where, you know, this is where your idea is. It's approved, it's not approved. They get some sort of notification.
Yeah, there's about 6 or 7, maybe 8 processes, don't hold me to that we've built into PPM to where at the various stages that the customers believe is important for the people submitting the ideas to be notified on. So if it gets rejected, or if it gets put on hold, or it gets approved, there's at least 5 emails that go out from PPM as it goes through the charter process. For instance, as soon as they hit submit or it goes through the ZOG process, they get an email saying basically, thank you for submitting your idea. Your idea number is 12345. It's been assigned to so-and-so. We will, you know, and that's the status. And the next one is your charter is under development. We're going to call you saying we need to finalize your business requirements and go through the charter to make sure we have a full understanding of what you're asking for. Then the next email is when the charter goes out for approval. And then there's a couple of emails that they get sent from it's a status email on who's approved it. And if somebody rejects it, they get an email for that. And hopefully there's a reason why if the rejector puts one in. Sometimes they don't, they just say rejected. And then of course the last email is it's finally approved. And our next one is funding, goes up through funding, that gets kicked back, approved funding or whatnot. And then if it's approved funding, they get a charge code assigned. That's very important in charter, so they know what checking account, so to speak, is going to be paying for this project. And then once that's done, it goes through final sign-off, and they get a final approval, and the requester gets an email saying your project charter has been approved, and it will be sent to whatever project management group to be assigned to a PM, and then follow-up will go from there, and then project kickoff and whatnot.
And you said, did Rigo help you with this process, or?
No, this was done internally with my team.
Internally,
yeah, this is all in-house. Yeah, I've known Rigo for a very long time. They're a gold partner with CA. They helped me out with my last 5 upgrades, and they've been perfect. I use them as my outside SME, and they're very, very good. They know my system. They know me. They know how we use PPM, and I really rely on them for things that we can't figure out. And I rely on CA as well, but sometimes you just need an extra set of eyes, and Rigo has really been there. So if any of you are looking at a third-party integrator, CA is great, don't get me wrong, but Rigo is good too. And I've got their contact information. But yeah, Rigo did not help us out with this. We use this technology for the ideas from what we did for BI from 2013. So we kind of regurgitated it, changed the code a little bit to do the ideas portion. And we're probably, to be honest with you, we're probably going to take this technology and use it in other areas of PPM if we can.
Now, is it possible to share this presentation, or?
Yeah, sure, you can.
Okay, perfect. Just in case there are questions about that. Great. This is great.
Yeah, my contact information's here. I encourage everybody on the call to call me. I'm very good at responding. CA uses me for multiple customer calls to help, if they have a customer that's looking to use PPM or maybe an HP open view or plan view or whatnot, I kind of sit on customer calls to share my experience with PPM, and by all means, contact me, and I can walk you through. I got a lot of knowledge. I think I can help you. I would say, since I've been doing this so long, I've probably been where you already are, and I've solutioned it. But what my solution that I've come up with satisfies my charter customers and probably won't satisfy yours. But I could very possibly help you out at a very high level to point you in a direction to say, well, why don't you try this, why don't you try this? This is what we did, and this didn't work for this customer because of this, this, or that. So I think I could be very useful, and I welcome each of you on the call to send me an email, sit in on a meeting if you want. That's no problem. Help you walk you through some things and kind of go from there.
Okay. Well, I definitely might have to take you up on that offer. So
yeah, that's perfectly fine.
I think, this is great that you're sharing your experience and in regards to this initiative and with ideas. And I think it's just really about us connecting, learning, and sharing with each other. Some organizations that may be looking to use ideas and haven't utilized it as of yet, or they may be using it and say, hey, this might be a better way of doing things. So we really appreciate you presenting. And is there anybody have any questions? Now's your time. Just unmute, #6.
Yeah, folks.
I will add one more thing.
Sure.
What we use too, I'm sure you guys, the people on this call can relate to this. We use SharePoint to store the project charters. We now use the knowledge store within PPM. So what the whole goal here is, the biggest complaint I get from my customers, and this, I'm sure you experience this as well, I got to work in too many applications to do my job. I got to be in this application to do this. I got to be in this application to do this. I got to be in this application to do this. And I got to jump on over Microsoft Word to do this. I just don't have enough time to be in all these applications. So what my goal for my customers is to have them have one source as much as possible. Now, obviously, Clarity can't do Microsoft Word or PowerPoint. Well, PowerPoint they don't need because they can use Clarity reports. But Clarity doesn't have Excel. It doesn't have Microsoft Word. So what my goal was at the end of the day was to keep my customers in PPM as much as possible in all these other applications. And that has been well received. And that's one reason why we got rid of SharePoint for the project charters, because they're all stored in the knowledge store. So that was a huge win for my customers, because, we got to get out of Clarity, we got to save it to SharePoint, check it in, check it out. We have too much work to come across all these different applications to store things and utilize things. We just don't have enough time in the day. So my goal was to, and this is a little bit of a marketing thing too. I'll be very honest. It's a marketing ploy. If I can show a customer where they can just have a one-stop shop to do almost all their work, well, I want it to be PPM. They use PPM, I get more users, my user base expands, boom. So we presented a knowledge store, and that went over really, really well. Just the ease of using it, credit to CA for producing a wonderful product of the knowledge store, and that was one of the big winners too with this whole ideas thing. So I wanted to add that.
So with that being said, and you're talking about the collaboration tab for each project, correct? So with that being said, with 15.4, there's a little bit of change to, the versionings and things like that. So are your users going to stay mainly in the classic for that? How's that going?
Yeah, we had a lot of my users went to CA World last November. I was there as well, and I met with all. There's like 30 of them that went, or about 30 customers basically, and they had mixed emotions about the new UI versus the 14.3 UI. So we still have to cross that bridge. So I'm trying to get them to do the 15.4 because I think that's just the best approach. But there's some diehard old school folks out there from the version 8, 10, 12, and 14 days that just are having struggles. So I don't know what we're going to do with that as of this point. My plan is to have everybody use 15.4, but I got to kind of respect the customer's decision to stay in the old. So we'll see how that goes.
That makes sense. Well, with that being said, I don't have any questions via the chat or Q&A section, But if anybody has questions, they can just speak up or #6 and ask Mike. We'll give it a minute or so. If not, then we'll end the call.
Gotta be questions. Maybe not.
Well, if you do have any questions, you have Michael's contact information here.
Yep.
If not, you can also email me, and I'll contact him. But this has been great. We truly appreciate you taking time out of your day.
Yeah.
And this is a recording which will be available, I believe, next week. Chris, if I'm mistaken, okay. But it should be available by next week, the recording.
Yeah, maybe by the end of this week, but definitely early next week we'll have the recording up, and we'll put Michael's presentation up on the site as well.
Okay, perfect. This has been great. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to join the call, and I look forward to speaking to you on the next quarterly web share.
Have a great weekend. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.